knowing all of this, knowing those intersectional traumas, knowing, that sexualized violence is seen not through a queer gaze, but through heteronormative patriarchal gazes. How do we engage with services? What does that mean? So the first thing is our lessons about bodily autonomy and integrity, right? Members of the queer community, the LGBTQIA plus community, can often feel like their body and their experience is open for public consumption, right? You have to tell people about your lifestyle. We're the only ones who are told to come out, right? Straight people, they don't come out to anybody. So there's this expectation that we will share intimate information about our lives for no other reason than heterosexuals expect it of us, right? So, and the idea of bodily integrity, that we don't always have the right to say no if things are going to happen for us, right? When we're talking about sexualized violence and the queer body, there isn't always a lot of space for how do I know that the way I experience my body is going to be honored, right? How do I talk to the nurse who is doing my exam after an assault and tell her, I don't experience my body the same way other people would. So if you aren't gentle, my dysphoria will be triggered, right? So this idea of bodily autonomy and integrity are really integral to any discussion with sexualized violence in the queer body. Okay. This idea, I own my body, I own my story. I don't have to share everything with you just because it might not be relevant. I was victimized, I was assaulted. My story and my body don't just become yours. Right? We have the right to confidentiality. I don't have to tell you that I'm polyamorous or practice non-monogamy or all of my gender story. I don't have to tell you that because the straight people who walk in here don't have to tell you that. But there's a difference because sexualized violence is perceived differently. I also wanted to hear, Jamie and I had talked about this before we started the recording. Also, this right to confidentiality in rural places and small towns, and where everybody kind of knows everybody, right? That fear of if I go to my doctor, is now everybody going to know about my stuff, right? So another barrier to getting the support we need is this idea of confidentiality. So how do we navigate this heteronormative cisgendered systems? How do we do that, right? Do I choose to just pass? From my own experience, I'm married to a cis dude, I have kids, I could easily pass as straight and not have to worry about things. But then I have to negate my own reality to make the system feel comfortable. Right? Do I choose to be small? Or do I choose to be authentic and get hurt, right? Actively sort of moving towards the secondary trauma. That heteronormativity as violence. Okay. So how does our trauma impact our service engagement? Right? How does prior trauma impact? So not even the sexualized violence we may be going to the services to get help with, but any of those prior traumas, how does that impact our service engagement? this knowledge that my trauma wounds won't be accommodated, right? So, for example, okay, I have learned that I have to be extra loud. I have to keep reminding people that I'm not straight. I have to advocate for myself, right? I also know that when I do those things, it's getting marked down. She's too loud, she's non-compliant, all of those things, right? So I know the learning I got from prior trauma wounds will not be accommodated. I need to be small and compliant. Right? I also know that I'm going to face micro and macro aggressions, right? I'll tell you a story. So I was, diagnosed. Lost that word there for a second. So I was diagnosed with an STI, but my partner doesn't have that same STI and should, right? And my doctor, it felt like he punished me. He punished me because he assumed I was cheating, and he made assumptions about sort of our relationship, and so it was just one big aggression after another, right? And yet I'm supposed to be the one who makes myself small and compliant because my queerness is too much. Right? So this goes back to that idea of cultural competency. That doctor didn't have flexibility in his practice, right? And so if I did experience sexual violence, I would not go to that doctor, right? And that might leave me without any support. Sorry. Okay. And then this idea, right? This barrier. I'm always the educator. Every time I walk in to get service, I need to educate people. I need to, so not me personally, all of us, the community, right? Always the educator. Show up, we have to explain pronouns, we have to explain gender expression, we have to explain non-monogamy or polyamory, just always. And so I wrote in there, well, I have to educate while bleeding out, right? So just another barrier of, I don't get to just walk in. I don't get to just walk in and get the service I need. I have to do all this education first. I have to explain that I don't have the same relationship to different body parts that other people do. Right? So I'm just not going to do it. So some citations for you. So if you haven't checked out the Community-Based Research Center, please, I highly recommend it. They have so many good resources there, right? And they've just created this illustrated guide that can help you navigate a doctor's appointment, right? Which is helpful. It shouldn't be on our shoulders to have to navigate a doctor's appointment. We should be able to walk in and just get service, but we know that's not the reality, right? And then that second citation is actually from right here in Nova Scotia, right? These ideas, how do we improve healthcare? And so I really appreciated that it was from Nova Scotia. I appreciated their findings. I hope you like that one.